Welcome back to the latest edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. This time, guess what we've got? Darren Stevens. That's right. It's the husband from Bewitched. Samantha used to wiggle her nose and...
Damn you!
You know, Lucretia's going to quit because of you. No, it's not Darren Stevens. It's the Even Stevens tag team. One of the biggest tag team forces on the East Coast indie scene. What's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with me. You give me this card, I can't read your writing. You think you can read a pink slip? It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Now caffeine free. Well, hello again, everybody. My name is Bob Smith. You may remember me from my years with Pro Wrestling Illustrated and other wrestling magazines. And this is the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We are glad you're back. We're going to take kind of a right turn on you this time. Now, I know a few weeks ago, and by the way, happy 2025 to everybody. Thank you for all the support we had with the recent 100th episode of our show. The response we got was overwhelming, and I want to thank each and every one of you for listening and being part of this. But anyway, a few weeks ago, we had Kayla Sparks on. Now, Kayla's not exactly a rookie, but we had her on the show because I think she's going to have a huge 2025. She's got everything it takes to be a star, and I think somebody's going to give her a chance to do just that. Now, talking to her reminded me of the introducing features I used to do in the Wrestler magazine all those years ago in the 80s and 90s. And now I have a young tag team. They're called Even Stevens. And I want to introduce them to you. They've been a tag team since 2018. A lot of success on the East Coast indie scene. And the reason I want to have him on the show is I actually know one of the guys. We had a common hobby not all that long ago. And he's a really cool dude. And I want you all to meet him. You may have met him already because he's already been on national TV. We'll get into that too. So listen, since we got youthful people on the show, what should we have for snacks? Get yourself a Slim Jim, get yourself a Red Bull maybe, or one of those energy drinks or those little mixers they use. I don't know. I'm still drinking the same stuff I drank when I was 12. But anyway, here's our look at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network for now. And we'll be back in just a few minutes with Even Stevens. Don't you dare go anywhere. We're going to have a lot of fun with this one. And we hope you like these guys, because I know I do. We'll be right back. Time for our look at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, of which this podcast is a member of. It all starts with the Wrestling Memory Grenade with Ray Russell. Join him as he analyzes and discusses years of wrestling history from your favorite promotions. From Hulkamania to Multimania, from the Midnight Express to the Lex Express. They're going to travel back to all different promotions and timelines. You won't want to miss a single episode of the Wrestling Memory Grenade. The Regional Wrestling Podcast, also hosted by Ray Russell, is 100% territory-based, dedicated to all those great promotions from the past, along with a slew of guest co-hosts. All kinds of topics, including event results, special interviews, yearly breakdowns, obscure outlaw promotions, and a whole lot more. That's the Regional Wrestling Podcast. One of the great wrestlers of the 1970s, Bob Roop, now has his own podcast. It's the Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop. He welcomes you to the show as he shares stories, historical moments, and memories from his 20-plus year career as a wrestler and booker, inside all facets of professional wrestling, including his very strange stint in Florida. DG's Puro Wrestling Academy. You can travel back in time to discuss the history of pro wrestling in Japan. For all of you out there, it is a history lesson in every episode. You'll never hear anything quite like DG's Puro Wrestling Academy. Join your host, Dan, as he travels back in time to discuss the history of Japanese pro wrestling. He spent decades studying the world of Japanese wrestling, and now he offers up his historian-level knowledge to all of you out there. If you want to know about Japanese wrestling, this is the podcast for you. The great Gene Jackson hosts the Retro Wrestling Review. brings a variety of co-hosts and wrestling legends to the programs. He goes back in time to rewatch and review pro wrestling from years gone by. You get a breakdown, hear never before heard stories, and you can watch along so you can enjoy the Retro Wrestling Review. It started out as Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert. Now it's Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert and Tommy Rich. They're up to almost 18 episodes now of two of the greatest wrestlers from the South ever to lace up a pair of boots. From the USWA to the NWA, you won't want to miss a single episode of Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert and Tommy Rich. One of the longest lasting podcasts in podcast history is Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty. Tons of guests, tons of history, a host who knows everything about the World Wrestling Association, and a whole lot more. You'll see new stars, old stars, stars in between. You hear them all on Wrestling Nostalgia. It was the WWF versus WCW, Raw versus Nitro, and it's the Monday Night Raw. That's right. Monday Warfare Raw versus Nitro is a podcast that has 30 episodes. You won't miss any of them. If you remember those days, it was neck and neck as the two giants battled for TV supremacy. Check out Monday Warfare Raw versus Nitro. The Other Ship Podcast is a pop culture podcast with a pro wrestling lean. Join a rotating group of co-hosts as they talk movies, sports, TV, music, food, and of course, pro wrestling. They take on various topics in roundtable discussions, special guest interviews, and other new concepts you may not have heard on any other podcast. As they themselves say, laugh your ass off on the voyage aboard the Other Ship. The Captain's Corner Pod features old school wrestling interviews and discussions, plus all the latest going on in the world of the Captain's adventures. Don't miss Nick on the Captain's Corner Pod. Also on the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, TR Shocks the World, the Glory Days GrappleCon Cast, WCNN News, TR Shocks the World, and the Power Hour. And there's probably a lot more podcasts to come on one of the biggest wrestling podcast networks you will find. It's the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. How do you find all these great shows? Here's an easy way to start. Just log on to WrestleCopia.com, press a couple of buttons, and get on that journey into wrestling past, present, and future. All right. As I mentioned earlier on, I had Kayla Sparks on the show a few weeks ago, and she's not exactly a rookie, but she's making a comeback. And I used to write the introducing features in the Wrestler magazine about young wrestlers who I think are going to be big coins someday. So I think Kayla is. And I got two guys here who have already made their mark in the East Coast indie scene. They're the Even Stevens tag team, Stephen Azure and Steve Somerset. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us, Mr. Smith.
Yes, thank you so much.
Now, let's get down to nitty-gritty. Steve Azure, I've known you for a long time.
If you keep calling me Azure, I mean, I kill you.
I'm just pronouncing it.
Nobody like ever says it right the first time. It's Azure.
Azure. Okay. Yeah. I am sorry. My name is Smith. What do you expect?
You are... Legitimately, there's still ring announcers to this day that like I'll correct them and it just doesn't matter. Like I give up after a while, but I like to at least let them know the first time.
But that sounds like a gimmick to me, though. It's like the old Buddy Rose thing from the 80s. I weigh 217 pounds, not 271 pounds. He was, of course, blubbery.
He was just
he was trying to lie. He was trying to lie his way into being skinnier. Steve Somerset, welcome to the show as well, my man. How's it going?
Absolutely. Everybody says my name perfectly.
Well, there you go.
Nobody has issues with my name.
Right. Well, welcome. You guys have been a tag team since about 2018. Do I read that right?
He's good. He's good.
No, No, he's so far so good on the research.
Yeah. Well, and you've also been all over the East Coast, Long Island and Connecticut, and probably other states I'm not even mentioning. In a tough business to get bookings in. You guys seem to be doing really well, so I want to congratulate you on your success so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, because I know Mr. Bowling Alley Steven, I'm not giving up on your last name. Because I know...
That's fair. People go Steve 1 and Steve 2. Just don't ask me who's which.
Steve, first I knew your brother, Darren, who is, by the way, can I mention that he's a PBA professional bowler at this point?
I'd be insulted if you didn't.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Great guy too. Wonderful human being. And then I got to know you, not knowing you guys were brothers. And one day you mentioned, kind of out of the blue, that, hey, I'm training to be a wrestler. And what year was that? What year did you start training?
I did actually start training in 2018. I saw a couple of shows in 2017. I was finishing up college and was looking for a school to go to. And I just happened to see a flyer for Create a Pro. during the summer. The only other school that I personally knew about beforehand was NYWC. But I reached out to them a couple of times. They never responded to any of my messages or emails. And Creative Pro kind of was just there. I went to 2 shows, fell in love with it right from the start. And on the day that I had my last final for college, the very same day, I took my final at NASA Community and went immediately to a show at Cap. They're doing an open house in December, and I signed up immediately that day and started training the next week.
I remember I think the last time I actually saw you in person was at a street fair. You and Chris Werbin were working Harold Lanes at that point.
Oh my God, yeah.
You remember that the Hyde Park Street Fair?
Yeah, that was.
And you were starting to look the part at that point. You started to, I guess, train a little bit more seriously, and you really started to look like you were getting ready to do something. And I guess I was right about that.
Yeah, it's it was a very interesting journey for me because I've always been a fan of pro wrestling since I could have memories of anything. I was always watching wrestling. It's one of those things like, they ask you in like elementary school, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like, I want to be a pro wrestler. It's like, it's one of those dumb things that, it's like, oh, that's a fun little, like, it's like astronaut or, brain surgeon or something. Like, oh, yeah, it's these crazy, like outlandish, like, 0.001% of people who say them actually like go for it. So like it never was like a serious thing. It's just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I could do this cool thing? I was always like, a chubby kid, like out of shape, like my whole life, like never looked the part as you say. But that really changed for me like in high school. Like I'm very fortunate that I ran into, I'm gonna give a shout out to Mr. Messina. I always thought it was fine because it sounded like John Cena and his first name was John. So he's John Messina is the one who trained me. Yeah, no, he got me in the weight room in high school, and I was fortunate enough that he got certified in CrossFit at the same time I was kind of training with him, and I kind of just like got on board with him, started doing these CrossFit workouts, and shedded a ton of weight, like really got in shape, got some confidence, and that was like really the first time that I was like, oh, I might actually be able to pursue pro wrestling where like even if it doesn't work out or whatever, I feel like I could go to like a practice or like a day camp or something like that and not embarrass myself, And yeah, it pretty much like from there, like I said, found Creative Pro and the rest from there, like I felt like I was set up really well for like the cardio wise and everything from doing the CrossFit. So like I felt like I had good wind to go, do practices and I just need to learn how to wrestle, which, you can say I still don't know what the hell I'm doing, but we'll figure it out.
Well, so were you inspired at all by the record of success that Creative Pro has had in launching real stars? I mean, you know the people who have gone through that school. Was that a factor for you?
For me personally, like I said, I kind of found Creative Pro just randomly. Like I wasn't really searching for it. I just happened to like come across a flyer. I was looking at schools at that moment. So I guess it's kind of like apropos, call it, figure fate, destiny or whatever that like I ended up finding it. And I'm very glad that I did. But I really didn't know anything about the schools. And I don't think anybody had really like in 2017 was, when I first started going to shows. So like there were definitely standouts when I went there. Like one guy that like I always talked about, like I fell in love with him the first time I saw him was Iron Savage Bronson. He was just like a guy that I was drawn to instantly when I went to a cab show. Like he comes to a curtain, I'm like, who the hell is this guy? He was like, to me, it was a no brainer. Like when he got like signed or whatever, I'm like, that was like such a long time coming. But to be able to see, like, I got to see like MJF and Chris Statlander and VSK and like all these guys like before they were signed. Like they were don't get me wrong, they were doing great stuff on the indies. I was oblivious to that, unfortunately. I didn't know that indies were even a thing, really. I literally thought it's like, oh, there's WWE and TNA, and I guess you're just like you go to like WWE school or whatever, and then they put you on NXT. Like I didn't know how that process really worked, or that there was like an alternate avenue in independent wrestling that you could like go and take. So that the first Creative Pro show I went to in 2017 was my first ever indie show because I just didn't know that they existed. And I was like, what the hell is that? It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I was just like, if I had known that this was like an option younger, I'm like, I would went a different path because I would have had dad been taking me to every local indie show. Like I never would have, gotten into anything else. So it was was really crazy. But I mean, to see like all these people that like I was fortunate enough to train with them in 2018, like from the ground up, my very first day of practice, like I'm in the ring with, the names that I mentioned alongside the head trainers, Pat Buck and Brian Myers, where it's just like, it's not a school at least then, like, people got busy and like they're under contract now. So like, it's a little more harder to get them there. But when I first started, like, it wasn't a school that like other people were training. Like it was Brian and Pat and they were running practice like every single day. So like I felt very fortunate, and also I'll throw Max Caster in there too because I've done more practices with him than literally any other human being on the planet. And those three guys like together really like are the people who made me the wrestler that I am. Because for at least the first like 3 years, like it was just like it was a Brian class, then a Pat class, then a Caster class, like every day. And if you look at like that caliber of talent, and like it's just like the three people that like just get professional wrestling like so well, and while also each bringing like a unique like spin or take on it. Where Pat is very like old school and focuses on like technical wrestling. Max Caster is a big promo guy and entertainment value, and then Brian is just he's done literally everything there is to do in pro wrestling. So to be able to pick the brains of like people like that and to do it every single day of the week when you're just learning, like it's like, how could you not, when you're surrounded by that much talent at a place like Cap, how could you not like apply yourself and get better,
Other Steve, Mr. Somerset, how did you get started?
How did I get started? Similar to Steve, I really wanted to get into wrestling, didn't know how. I knew a little bit about independent pro wrestling. Very little. There was a local promotion called VPW that I would go to when I was in high school. Shout out. And that was about it. But then one day I saw an open house flyer, went to a different school, trained there for about 2 years, learned what I had to learn, and learned all I was going to learn, and got the hell out of there. And then I knew about Creator Pro. I had wrestled Max Caster, Kevin Tibbs, MJF, like at other promotions, and have known about the school. I signed up there right away, and like Steve said, it was completely different place, complete different mindset, and it really was a golden era where you'd have Brian, Pat, Caster, like all these guys, MJF, like training us and really honing our craft. It was just something that I always wanted to do. Watching it on TV, you're like, oh, I want to do that. Like, I want to be John Cena. Like, who doesn't want to be John Cena? It's as simple as that. Like, can get your feet wet, and then you're in it. Now you can't get out. You're in it.
Okay, so what? It's a two-pronged question. Either of you can answer it. You guys started teaming around 2018. How did it come about? And how did you develop this really good thing you've got going? The chemistry between you two guys, the humor that you inject into your shtick. This is good stuff. So I just, how did it all develop? And either of you can answer it.
Yeah, I'll take it from here, Nurse. We would do promo class quite often at Creator Pro. Like I said, I had started wrestling a little bit before Creator Pro, so I had a little bit of a character. By that point, I already had the sweater vest, and I was a good guy. Didn't quite know who I was, but I was, cutting funny, silly promos. And, there we have Steve. He didn't have a character, but he was also cutting silly promos and being silly. And, he was a bad guy. So Brian talked to me and said, what do you think about becoming a tag team? He saw very similarities in the promos. So we kind of just stuck together, blended the two, kept my look, went with more of Steven's character, and it kind of just blossomed from there. I mean, we would go on the road and get out there, and the more time we spent together, we realized, like, we're strangely similar to the point where, we have one mind now, and it's scary. It is terrifying how much we are one unit at this point.
It's so funny having like being on like a long car ride, or even meeting like new people who like maybe have heard of us, but like it's their first time really interacting with us. And it's like they'll see it, and other people just like, oh, it's the Steves being the Steves now. But when you get somebody new who hasn't experienced it, and you see like the hive mind like at work, like it's so funny to me to watch that.
For those who haven't seen you two, how would you describe the Even Stevens? What are you guys? I mean, what would you say your thing is that bond you together? Tell me about the sweaters. Give the audience the whole tour of who you are.
Well, just I mean, you can elaborate on top of this more, Steve, obviously, but one thing that I think of is like the simplicity. So if like somebody asks like, oh, who are the Even Stevens? Like, what are your character? Like in 3 words, like, or 4, we are goofs in sweater vests is what I like to say. Yeah, that's sweater vest. Sometimes you think of it as one unit. Anyway, yeah,
Right.
like I like to think of ourselves as that because it's just like we use the sweater vest as kind of like a stylistic choice. We're entertainers at heart, you know. Like I'll be the first to tell you, like we're solid in the ring, but we're no Kenny Omega or Will Ospreay. Like if that's what you're expecting from the Even Stevens, you're gonna be upset. But if you're expecting to go to a show and you want to engage with the wrestlers who are in the ring and feel like you yourself are a part of the show, that's what we bring to the table.
Yeah, we very much a improv funny act, if you will. We say things like we're the best in the world, we're brothers because we have the same first name, silly things, and a lot of stuff just not planned, just off the cuff, silly, goofy, and with the vests, you might think, oh, these are just silly guys, like they can't wrestle, and then we'll throw in a couple moves here or there that like surprise you, and you're not ready for it, and it works well against opponents. They're not ready for what the Steves bring to the table.
So it's working though. I mean, you guys are working a lot. Am I reading this right? You guys should be booked quite often, singles and tag team. Am I reading right my research, or is that correct?
Yeah, this I will say this year in particular has been our best year professionally. It was a very slow build. I think Steve and I, like, we've evolved as performers and as the Even Stevens, but at the core we've always kind of been like this impromptu, funny, like act, like Steve said. I think we just needed time to develop and really like be polished and be like ready to go. So it took a minute to kind of like get our names out there. But I feel like last year we started like working on it, and this year really snowballed where we were just making the drives, and we had networked with a bunch of people who had kind of like vouched for us. They had been in the ring with us. They saw us work shows and like, oh, these guys aren't just, these goobers that are just, cracking jokes. They can actually get it done in the ring too, and they can provide value to my show. So I feel like once a couple promoters like saw that, and then we'd work with them a couple of times, they'd be like, "Oh, okay, I didn't get it before, but I kind of get it now, and I can put you guys in pretty much any position." I like to think that we're very versatile, and we can be the funny guys, we can be like the dastardly heels, like we can do comedy, we can be serious if the match or the occasion calls for it. So I feel like we've been like those chameleons of sort where you can really find a spot or stick us in wherever you need, and we'll knock it out of the park. So I feel like that's not, you can say that and it doesn't really hold a lot of weight. So like you kind of have to go out there and prove it. And it's taken a while. Like we've been teaming now for 7 years, and I feel like we're just starting to get like the recognition and the buzz, if you will, like this year. But I think that's been very if I'm going to pat myself on the back, say it was well deserved, just because we put so much work, energy, and effort into it for the last 6-7 years to get to this point.
Yeah, when we first started, we were just focused on like local promotions, trying to just get our names out there at all. And it was a little difficult at first. We had a lot, like this was 2018, so before AEW, they had there was a lot of talent in the indies. It was hard to get on shows, and then COVID happened, and that was a whole struggle within itself. But we try to just keep doing stuff, whether it was wrestling or just like making content. We have tried a lot of things when it comes to like making content and just trying to entertain ourselves and trying to entertain whoever. Social media is a big aspect in everything, so professional wrestling is no different, where we're just trying to get our names out there. And this year we went to a lot of new places, or we starting to have some regular bookings now at these big independent promotions. I mean, we a new one on our bucket list was Excite Wrestling up in Binghamton. Worked a couple of more than a couple of our fair share of Royal Rumbles and Battle Royals. And then look at us now. We are the current Excite Tag Team Champions.
You got that straight.
Just from going there, showing that we're, not just goofs and sweaters, that we could really get things done and prove to promoters and fans alike that, even Stevens are here and we actually are the best in the world.
I saw the video of you proclaiming that you were the new champions, and I said, wow, that's really great. I just think that all the hard work seems to be paying off you guys have put in. Now, I have a question for Mr. Azure.
There you go.
He's
good. He's good.
Here's the question. I saw you on TV twice.
Uh-oh.
You know what I'm referring to? Let's just.
Well, you saw me on TV once, maybe. So that's why I'm sure see where this is going.
Well, I've also been on TV, but we'll get to me later.
Oh, you've been on TV too? Okay, but
we don't have to talk about me. No, let's Stephen Hatcher. You've been on television for.
Well, how did that come about? Somebody smacked you on TV.
Yes, Becky Lynch has a hell of a right hook.
It was more than a slap. Yeah,
nobody told me that. Yeah, that's one of the perks, if you will, of being Creative Pro. We have this big network of people where we've definitely gotten opportunities, and especially at the time, like that was 2019, I believe, the Becky Lynch security thing. Pat Buck was an agent for WWE at the time. So we kind of like were going through him to get like, he would book like extras, and whenever they're in New York, yeah. So like we had been training at Creative Pro for pretty much like just under 2 years at this point. And, we knew that extras were like a thing, like that had been made clear. So I remember us going into the office one day and, like talking to them and being like, hey, like, we know that, they're going to be in town. Like, do you need extra hands? Like, I think that this is something Steve and I could do. With your blessing, obviously, like we're still new or whatever, but we just kind of like wanted an opportunity to be like, hey, if you give us like this chance, we won't embarrass ourselves like at, a major company. We are fortunate to get booked for that day. Yeah. Like I remember like it's been a while, and like it was
started with SmackDown first.
Yeah, so it started SmackDown. I'll go reverse order, but yeah, because maybe we weren't even booked for that Monday Night Raw, because there was one, maybe, yeah, that's what it was then. Again, my timelines are all over the place with me, but yeah, no, so we were doing that SmackDown, and I'll talk about what I did that day, but basically, Steve and I were both extras on that show, and we had done a good job not embarrassing ourselves, and Pat was, an agent at the time, so he basically said, hey, can you guys also do Monday Night Raw? Yes, like obviously, like I remember my boss being like super pissed at me that like I only gave him like 2 days notice. He's like, it's Friday and you're telling me you need off Monday. And I'm like, yeah, I was on national TV tonight. I mean, I'd be on national TV on Monday. So like piss off, like it was literally one of those things where I'm like, if you tell me to be there on Monday, I'm telling you I'm not. And if you fire me, you fire me. Like, I'm not passing an opportunity, up like this, but yeah, we got there. I had to out bump a couple of other security guards to earn my spot beforehand, and yeah, we went through it all, and I blown away by how good the response was. If anybody thinks that what we do isn't on the up and up, like look at that slow mo footage, because Becky Lynch decks me in the jaw. Like it is, she hit me, she got me. Yeah, the other opportunity that you were referring to, which is from that previous SmackDown. The reason I was confused is because you didn't see me. You saw me in a mascot outfit, because not everybody knows if they don't know me or whatever, but I was the big dog mascot for the Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin feud. That was the greatest segment of all of WWE history. I think you can all unanimously agree on that.
Didn't you wrestle Keith Lee?
Yes, I did. I did wrestle Keith Lee. So did Steve. Both of them were dark matches beforehand. They were never actually televised or aired.
They weren't? I thought I saw it.
There's a clip when they were doing a promo, like they were doing like vignettes for Bearcat, like coming to like SmackDown or something like that. And Steve is actually in that vignette footage taking like a Beal from.
Am I?
Yeah. You have they throw you, and it's just like your reaction shot to like getting yeah, they didn't use any of my stuff, which that's fine, but yeah, no, because it was so funny, because it was like one of those like organic things that like people who don't know would probably just assume that like, oh yeah, they wrestled one of the Even Stevens last week, and then next week Keith Lee wrestled the other one, and it's like it was so random. Like it was such a coincidence. Like it had absolutely nothing to do with like anything. Like I happened to do extra work. I think I was by myself actually. I don't even think Steve was with me that day, and they're like, hey, Bearcat's got this like new gimmick. I think he maybe had done like 1 or 2 dark squash matches beforehand, maybe. But like he was really like trying to fine tune and like figure like this new character out. And they sent me out there to the Wolves, and I gave it my best shot. But if you can believe, I didn't really get too much offense on Mr. Bearcat. But it was a very cool experience. I do believe at the time that would be my first match, like actually in an arena. Like, so that even though it wasn't televised, that still was like a huge bucket list thing. Cause like how many people get into wrestling can say they got to wrestle a match like in a WWE ring, like that's crazy. Like even if we don't do anything for the rest of our lives and it's all downhill from here, I can rest my vest on the fact that, I got to get that opportunity, and, that's pretty cool. And I forget exactly how it happened, but the following week we were there doing extra work together, and that was when Steve got the opportunity to wrestle Mr. Bearcat.
I mean, WWE guys, I mean, at least you got your foot in the door. You experience what it's like, what the backstage aura is like. That had to be a thrill for both of you. Mr. Somerset, how do you feel about that?
It was a crazy experience. I mean, when we first did it in 2019, it was a huge opportunity for us. I guess we did a good enough job. They brought us back for the following Monday. I had the opportunity to wrestle Mojo Rawley on an episode of Main Event that aired on Hulu. And that was the same night Steve got punched by Becky Lynch. Crazy night for both of us, and we, at the time, we were pretty close with Brian. So we were hanging out with like Dolph Ziggler and Matt Cardona. And we were just looking at each other like, we don't belong. Like, we belong. Like, no one's kicking us out. Like, we're just hanging with the boys, and we're like backstage at WWE. It was a crazy experience. And, we've always, had fun doing extra work for both WWE and AEW.
Guys, where do you want to end up? You're working pretty steadily now. You got a name for yourselves. However, people who pass from the indies to the majors have a tendency to have a booker or a person at that company go, I want you to do this, which isn't always specifically what you do now. In other words, they'll change your character. They'll change what you do. What are your feelings about that moving forward? Let's say if you got an opportunity, you had to do something entirely different. Would you be adaptable to that?
Yeah, I again, it's hard to say like in this, exactly where we will end up like in this current moment. Right now, we're just kind of trying to do the best work that we can and hope that somebody takes notice. It's weird because like if you asked me that a couple of years ago, it would be like a big concern, I think. But we've been seeing more and more like lately, like with AEW and even like on NXT, where like when people come in from the indies, they will keep their same gimmick. Like they will keep their same name, which is like still relatively new. Like that really wasn't the case, even like 4 or 5 years ago. So I feel like if you're gonna sign the Even Stevens, like you're signing us because you want us. Like I don't think there's one aspect of either one of us. Like the sum is greater, the whole is greater than some of its parts, Like we're one thing, we're one unit. So I almost would be like, if you wanted to sign just one of us, it's like, why? Like it's not going to be the same thing. So much of the gimmick and the character is us bouncing off of each other. So it's like, why wouldn't you want that? Like, because that's what you're appealed to if you're signing us. So it's like, wouldn't you just want the team?
Mr. Somerset? Has it all been worth it? Is this whole journey, I hate that word, has this whole professional wrestling experience been worth it? Because I know what it's like to train to be a wrestler. I was around a lot of wrestling schools when I was with the magazines, and it's tough. You give up a lot of your life to learn this stuff. It's not easy. It's hard on the body. It's hard on the soul. And sometimes you get upset at the lack of progress at times. Has it all been worth it? We'll start with Steve Somerset.
I think it has been worth it because, once I was able to transfer this call from the laptop to the phone, this whole experience has been lovely. Was regretting the whole getting into the wrestling business, just because I had Wi-Fi issues. I could finally see the light, and it's been a blessing. It truly has. Communications, just 2024, you need better Wi-Fi sometimes. I'm blaming the laptop because my phone is great. Shout out AT&T if you're listening.
We know that you
But
are.
yeah, it is difficult at times depending on what's going on in your personal life.
Mm-hmm.
I've recently gotten married. So there is that, there is, having to have two separate lives, wrestling and keeping the wife happy and stuff like that. And I've been lucky enough to not have any serious injuries. That in itself is a blessing. But we've gotten a lot of cool opportunities and, are striving to do more cool opportunities, even if the end of the road isn't where we necessarily want it to be. I mean, this has been such a journey. And, I met my best friend. Like, that's kind of crazy. He is my real life brother, we always do everything together. It's not just for wrestling, we'll hang out outside of wrestling and, we have a strong bond and, we met so many people through wrestling and yeah, you've heard so many cool experiences. Without it, I mean, I don't know what I would be doing right now. This has been so much fun. Totally worth it. I'll say it. Totally worth it.
Great to hear that. Everybody's so bitter these days. It's nice to hear somebody come on the other side going, "This was all great." Mr. Azure, yes, has it been fun? Has it all been sweetness and light, or have there been times you went, "Oh, geez, what do I do?"
Yeah, no notes. Honestly, I think it's just perfect. Yeah, really. No, it's funny you say that. Like with people being like bitter or whatever. Like, I mean,
we've seen that.
Yeah, like we've probably experienced it like ourselves. Like I know I've definitely had like my ups and downs. Like there is nothing that will bring you to the highest of highs and the lowest of lows like pro wrestling can. But the dichotomy of us, like I literally did like like SmackDown extra work, and as the big dog, and got all this praise from backstage, and like shaking hands with people that I have no business being in the same room as, and they're telling me how good of a job I did. And the very next night, Saturday, we're working a local show. And I asked the promoter, "Hey, we've been doing your show for 3 years. Can we get paid more than $20?" And I get told basically to go F myself. So it's just like, one day you're impressing billionaire like people or whatever who love what you're doing and appreciate you being there. And then the next day it's like you can't get anything. It's like pro wrestling, nothing will make you more humble in life than pro wrestling. Like
yeah, she didn't even know our names, dude.
But yeah, no, like again, like if this all ended tomorrow, Steve and I together have done some really cool stuff. So like he said, we don't really know where the end of the road is going to be. Hopefully it's on our terms. And, when we decide to walk away, that's when we will. I've had a few injuries like my jaw or whatever, but everything that I've had, I've gotten taken care of so that the future is open and I don't have to worry about that stuff if and when we do get signed. And it really has been like that's. I don't mean to go off on a tangent. I'll keep it short and sweet. But that was a big, not like a turning point for me per se, but when I got my jaw broken in, an unaired match, and my jaw was already messed up to begin with. It's not like it was his fault. It was bound to happen at some point, basically, with how physical wrestling is and how my jaw was just doing its own thing to begin with. Like it was going to happen one way or another. But it's one of those things where like it happened. I wasn't happy about it in the time, but having the surgeries now, having my jaw be structurally sound and strong and, able to take a hit now, means that like it won't happen in the future. And I'm, would never say that I'm fortunate to have had two jaw surgeries. Like that's not the right word, but I'm glad that if it was going to happen, that happened when it did. And I'm kind of on the other, the other side of it. Yeah, like it's I never want to be bitter. I want to be happy with what I'm doing, and I like Steve said, like yeah, I met my best friend in the whole world. Like he and I hang out and do everything. It's not just wrestling. We're not just putting on some sort of charade or an act like where yeah, he's tearing up, man. But yeah, like we're really in this thing together, and we've met so many cool people. Like people that were in his wedding party, people that we have over each other's houses, like literally lifelong friends that we met because we all just decided to do this dumb thing called wrestling. Like it's as hard as it's been, and I'm sure that there's still a ton more work to do in the future, especially for us to get to where we want to. It's the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. My proudest accomplishment in my life to this day is graduating from Creative Pro. Like graduating high school, graduating college, doesn't even compare. Like Creative Pro is the place that gave me the foundation for the rest of my life, the way I see it. And I couldn't be happier to be doing it alongside my brother in Argyle, Mr. Steve Somerset.
Very cool. So, either of you guys, give me the tour. Where can people go to see your matches on video? Anything you want to do, hype yourselves. How can people find the Even Stevens?
So you can find us. We don't have any joint accounts, but individually on social media, I'm at Steven Azure Cap. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. He's Steve_Somerset on the same platforms. In terms of togetherness, I guess is the word I'm going to use here. We do a weekly YouTube show called Steven Update, where we promote we have a vlog that we do from shenanigans and whatnot that we get into while being on the road during our independent journey. And that releases every single week on Tuesday. And you can find that at my YouTube channel. That's at Steven Azure. If you're having trouble finding it, though, you can always type in Even Stevens Wrestling. Don't do Even Stevens because apparently that was like a Disney show with Shia LaBeouf, and people get confused with that all the time.
It also airs on Instagram and Twitter. You know, if you follow us there, you'll see it.
Well, we'll let you know. We like to blast on all accounts. You're not going to miss it.
And you're not going to want to miss it. How about that? Ooh.
You watch it now. Don't threaten me with a good time.
I will watch it every Tuesday.
I'm going to leave you guys with this. I would not have had you fellows on my nostalgia wrestling show if I didn't think you had something to offer the fans out there. And I think once they see you, they're going to become fans as much as I am. And I know I had a friendship with you, Mr. Azure.
You're still good.
Am I still getting it?
I'm losing it each time, though.
Yeah, it takes a while. I'm old. I'm so old that your younger faces on the coins in my pocket. Anyway, it's what you do is kind of cool. It's fun. I think the fans will really be into it, and with any luck, some people will discover the East Coast indie scene, which is kind of thriving, isn't it?
It really is.
I'd say so.
Yeah, I mean, people are out there really attending these shows. It's not like, I mean, I look at Philadelphia, I look at upstate. You mentioned Binghamton. I know Albany's got some stuff going on. Long Island, of course, has like 3 different organizations that are rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty lively right now, and that's a really healthy thing for the industry as a whole, I think.
I completely agree, especially with, how many times can, Azure put Creative Pro over in one interview. But if you're on Long Island and, you're a wrestling fan and, you're visiting or whatever, like, check out Creative Pro, man. Like, there is... Yeah, it's not one of those, like, it doesn't promote itself as like one of these big top name level indies, but you look at the talent on AEW. If you want to see like tomorrow's superstars right now, like, check out a Creative Pro show. Like, the talent there and the type of show that's put on is second to literally none.
You're not kidding, because it's like, I knew who Creative Pro was. When I was working, I worked for that entertainment magazine Good Times before this, back when I knew you, Steve.
Yeah.
And they were sending me some stuff, and I was rooting for the Statliners and the MJFs back then. And I think these kids are going to make it, and they did. So, the sky's the limit, because they're not fooling themselves. This is not a fly-by-night organization. They are serious pros, serious trainers, serious matches, serious events. And I think the proof's in the pudding, because, the graduates are doing great stuff.
Yeah. I mean, even like in the last month alone, we had 2 graduates be ID'd, WBID, and Aaron Rourke and Bryce Donovan.
I was going to mention them.
Yeah, it's like, it's not even like AEW anymore. Like, it's if you graduate from Creative Pro, statistically speaking, you will get signed at some point. Like, just going by numbers alone.
When they say Creative Pro, they really mean it, don't they?
They're creating.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's not create a wrestler, create a jabroni. It's Creative Pro.
Well, I don't want to sound like a commercial for CAP, but I'll tell you what, they're getting the job done. I mean, they really are. It's undeniable. If you look at the people who have filtered through there one way or another, I mean, it's like I can't help but be impressed. Let's hear it for Creative Pro Wrestling, and let's hear it for the Even Stevens who put up with my shenanigans here and some bad sound modules or some weird stuff. There's been ghosts in the machines ever since we started this interview, folks. The fact that we're here is a miracle. We're all hearing each other and seeing each other. Mr. Somerset, it's a pleasure to meet you for the first time. And Mr. Stephen Azure.
Nope.
Did I get it?
You lost.
What is it? What
I
is
liked
it?
it. It was sexy. It was.
What is
hot.
it?
I did
Say it
I
again.
didn't hate it.
Azure. I can't wait for losing. But anyway, folks, these are the Even Stevens. Thank you for being on our program. We really appreciate it. And keep on trucking, guys. I know success is in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having us.
You got it. Been a weird period for me. I will say this. For the longest time on the podcast, and I want to apologize for this, I said, if you write to me, I'll write you back. I'll tell you what, between late October and like 3 minutes ago, it's been crazy for me in my personal life because, I do admit I still work full time for a sports media company, even at my advanced age. And I am telling you, the holidays kicked my tuchus. I really worked hard and there was a lot going on, holidays. It happens that way sometimes. You got to kind of cram a lot of work into a small amount of time. And I just, did I get remiss with checking my emails? And so if you've written to me recently and you haven't heard from me, I will try to make an effort very soon to get back to everybody who wrote to me and have nice discussions with you all. But including one guy who was trying to get a hold of me for business reasons. We just haven't been able to jibe. So in any event, I'll be back. I promise. But I do apologize. It has been crazy busy and all that on top of the 2 podcasts here and everything else. It's just been Looney Tunes, but I'll get back to you. I promise. Write to us if you want to wait 2 months for a response. No, write to us at outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. All one word, Outdated Wrestling. Our website, outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. All of our episodes are there. You can also hear recent episodes at the WrestleCopia.com website, too. Also on outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com, learn how you could be part of the Outdated Wrestling Hour fan club for a nominal fee. And we are talking very, very little. You can help perpetuate the ongoing adventures of the show, as well as our sister podcast, the Outdated Entertainment Hour, which is growing exponentially thanks to you guys again. I have to admit, I have a soft spot for the Entertainment Hour because it's like, as the great Brian R. Solomon once said, man does not live by wrestling alone. And I have a lot of interest in the entertainment world, and we're going to have some really cool guests coming up. In fact, we have a new show right now. Glenn Burkett and I talk about, SCTV and Saturday Night Live, focusing on the early years. I know you're going to get a kick out of that one. We have a lot of cool stuff in the weeks ahead, as we always try to do. We're going to have some new faces on the show, just like tonight, and new old faces too. And I know our motto: all new, all old, right? And I want to keep it that way too. But nostalgia is kind of hot right now. I don't know if it's as hot as it was like a couple of years ago, but I think we're doing fine with the nostalgia bent. We'll see how it goes. We'll have some wacky stuff. I'm hoping to have some repeat guests, and I know we want Bill Apter back on the show soon. And we've been working on a couple of guests. I mean, Mick Foley on the last show, it took us a long time to jibe our schedules, but I was very happy to have his dulcet tones on my airwaves. Very cool. Mick Foley's one of the nicest people in the history of anything. He really is. He's just salt of the earth, as they used to put it back in my day. And my day is coming to a close. My name is Bob Smith. This is the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We come out every Friday. Now, let me explain what that means, too. When we come out Friday, I give it to the host. We have a host that disseminates this show to all the apps and things. Just because the host has it on Friday doesn't mean anybody puts it up exactly at midnight on Friday. Some do. The big ones tend to get on there real quick. The smaller ones tend to drag their feet a little bit. It'll come on Saturday or something like that. But we do release the show every Friday. Just to be clear about that. And we're on YouTube. We are on as many podcast apps as I can think of, and some I can't think of because there's some in Europe that have it that I've never heard of. It goes on and on and on. Although a lot of my favorite ones have closed. I used to like Stitcher. I like Samsung Podcast, which became Samsung News, which is gone now. I don't understand how the podcast industry works, but thankfully nobody else does either. So as I scratch my head, this is Bob Smith. We will see you next week. And in the words of the great Ringo Starr, who keeps on rocking, peace and love, brothers and sisters. Peace and love.